Hi there friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan and I'm glad to announce that Christmas is almost here, which means that this year is almost over. Terrific, because it's been a terrible year. Anyway, it's also time for us to remove all those bear traps and claymores away from our fireplaces, because even though the dolphin threat is still quite high, no one wants to cause Santa Claus to lose a leg to gangrene. Anyway, let's talk about Thrawn today. You know, he's one of my favorite characters in all of Star Wars, and it's not only because he's such a cool character, he in many ways is responsible for bringing Star Wars into my life and a lot of people's lives. You see, when Timothy Zahn wrote the trilogy, it hit the New York Times bestseller list and did extremely well. This actually caught the eye of George Lucas and made him realize that there was still a pretty large audience for Star Wars, and that led him to creating the prequels, which of course was the first Star Wars film I saw in theaters when I was a kid. I would end up eventually reading the Thrawn trilogy after seeing the entire prequel series. I immediately fell in love with the analytical mind that this Chiss warrior had. He was one of the most reasonable and rational individuals in the galaxy, full of hotheads, extremists, fascists, and terrorists. It was kind of a fresh breath of air watching him take apart his opponents by just using his mind. He had no magical force, no massive navy to back him up. He had no cheat codes. I would see Thrawn pop up time and time again in novels and comics like Outward Bound, but eventually Disney would take over Star Wars and Thrawn became a part of Legends lore, as in it was no longer officially canon. But then the Rebels cartoon came out, helmed by Dave Filoni, and we were once again reintroduced to the Chiss warrior known as Thrawn. At first, I was really excited about seeing Thrawn. I imagined he'd be exactly like the Thrawn I grew up reading about and loving. And at first, things seemed legit. The new Thrawn was drawn to artwork and used his enemies' art to understand their mindset and culture. He would then use that information to predict their tactics. Now, this was classic Thrawn behavior, but as I started watching Dave Filoni's Rebels series closer, I realized that Thrawn kind of came off as a little more savage and brutal than his novel character used to be. In one of Thrawn's early episodes in Rebels, he's tasked with investigating a surge of defective vehicles coming from the Lothal Imperial Armory complex. Thrawn visits the factory that manufactures the vehicles and calls all of the workers to attention. He then forces one worker to ride a speeder bike that he just inspected. Thrawn wanted the worker to test how quickly he could reach maximum speed on the bike, and soon it began to overheat. The worker pleads for Thrawn to let him stop, but the Chiss warrior tells him to continue, until the speeder of course explodes, killing him. Now I know why Thrawn would want to make an example out of this worker who's sabotaging essentially a flying motorcycle. His actions have probably killed a lot of good scout troopers. But this is actually a very simplistic response to sabotage. It's a very primal eye-for-eye punishment that doesn't lead Thrawn any closer to understanding who else is sabotaging Imperial machines. Creating obedience from fear is a very Tarkin-like idea, and Thrawn from the very beginning opposed the Tarkin school of thoughts, and also a superweapon, the Death Star. And then there's this idea of Thrawn enjoying the suffering and death of another individual. It doesn't sit well with me because I know the Thrawn that I know didn't enjoy those kind of things. The thing is, Thrawn doesn't have much room for emotional responses, either positive ones or negative ones. But he is what I would like to call lawful good. Thrawn is quite an ethical and moral individual, and that's because he realizes that one of the most major cornerstones of a stable society is that unspoken moral code that everyone just decides to follow. Thrawn is against unnecessary killing because he sees it as a waste and a sign that the killer has lost control of himself. I mean, that doesn't mean Thrawn's never killed anyone before. He's killed plenty of people, especially while being a commander of a giant Star Destroyer. But he's against wanton destruction that has no purpose. So then why is Thrawn serving one of the most evil and destructive individuals in the entire galaxy, Emperor Palpatine? You see, Thrawn is a Chiss. These were a blue near-human alien race that settled in the unknown region. The unknown region is an extremely dangerous place. Some unknown cosmic force or event basically caused this area of space to have a very high density of gravitational anomalies. This makes travel and communication in the area extremely difficult and deadly. The Chiss Ascendancy's territory is one of the lone calm spots in the unknown region, and so the Chiss's borders are being constantly tested by the many hostile alien races that roam the region. Now, Thrawn's primary motivation in life is to make sure that the Chiss people are safe and secure. Thrawn's appearance in the Galactic Empire is very much like an exchange program. Thrawn essentially cuts a deal with Emperor Palpatine in exchange for his loyalty and service, along with information about the unknown region. Palpatine will view the Chiss in a better light and potentially become an ally. Now, Thrawn in the novels quickly assesses the Empire and realizes what it is. He is impressed by the size of the Emperor's military and his iron will. Thrawn believes that the Empire is necessary for stability and peace in the galaxy. And so serving the Empire really does fulfill his goals of protecting the Chiss from more external threats. He basically wants to make sure that he's allied with the biggest dog in the entire galaxy. And also, when the Yuzang Vong come in later in Legends, Thrawn also sees the Empire as a better alternative than the Republic, which was usually demilitarized. Now, Thrawn was actually forced to go through the Imperial Military Academy system, and it's here we get to see just how ridiculously smart this guy is. I mean, he's able to quickly learn the ropes of the Imperial military and ascend to a command position. Thrawn has quite a difficult time at the Academy as a junior officer in a social sense, and this was mostly due to the Empire's more human-centric culture. Blue aliens kind of stick out in a sea of pink skins, and so he got picked on quite a lot. But of course, Thrawn's bullies were never really any match for him, and Thrawn didn't try to destroy his enemies. Instead, he would win their respect through his sheer brilliance. So killing that worker was not only a mean thing to do, it was also kind of stupid. It doesn't really fall into line with what we know about Thrawn. Thrawn always tries to keep his enemies alive if he can, so that way he can study and observe them. And Dave Filoni, I suspect, wrote that scene with Thrawn just to make him appear like another cartoonish bad guy who is very easy for the audience to hate. And I really hate that they're doing this to this very interesting character. In another scene during the failed Rebel attack on Lothal, an overly eager Captain Volt Scarus is chasing Rebel hero Hera Syndulla in his TIE Defender. Thrawn's ISD, the Chimera, has a trap set for Hera Syndulla, and the Chiss tells Captain Scarus to break off his pursuit that he can launch his attack. Scarus, who's kind of an idiot, refuses, and so Thrawn fires anyway, killing the Imperial pilot. I understand that Thrawn here probably made the right choice because Captain Scarus disobeyed a direct order, and in this case, the goal of the mission was to stop the rebels from breaking through the Imperial blockade, which is what Thrawn did exactly. But Thrawn was never an individual who would needlessly sacrifice his own soldiers, let alone kill them. It just doesn't seem like him. While Thrawn was a tactical savant, he was actually also an individual who possessed excellent leadership skills. You see, when you're a part of Thrawn's crew, school is in constant session. Thrawn's ship has no room for individuals with inflated egos or career officers who got their position because of seniority or political connections. It didn't matter who you were on the ship, you could be the first officer or a lowly maintenance crew member. Thrawn is always constantly wandering around the ship looking at what you're doing and then asking you why you're doing to make sure you understand what's going on. The Chiss commander is constantly testing his crew and making them better and helping them analyze things in the same way he does. When his crew makes a mistake, he shows them what they're doing wrong, and he really does try to make them better people. And while Thrawn might disapprove of individuals with inflated egos and disobeying orders, he usually didn't kill his own men unless he had no choice otherwise. It's the small moments in the Rebel series where you catch Thrawn snarling in anger and hatred that turn me off of Dave Filoni's portrayal of the Chiss warrior. Thrawn is supposed to be completely rational. He's supposed to be an extremely talented bad guy and antagonist, but he's also supposed to be very likable and not some cartoon version of what a bad guy is. I hope Disney continues this, portrayal of morally gray individuals, because I think it's a much more honest reflection of our society and the people in it. There are very few, completely good and bad people, and labeling people as completely evil and completely good is oftentimes a huge mistake and leads to even more issues. Anyway, I do hope, we will see Thrawn soon in either Dave Filoni's Mandalorian or another one of these Star Wars TV shows that are coming up, and I hope we see the version of Thrawn that we've seen from the novels that is much more calculating, much more emotionally detached, and not necessarily evil or just plain mean. That doesn't really suit what Thrawn should be. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below. Let me know in the comments section below if you agree with my assessment of how Dave Filoni has kind of portrayed Thrawn. And also, guys, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.